And now I invite you to spread this idea, this loving kindness, this peaceful meditation to the world, where to all appearances there seems to be a total lack of peace. To all beings, may they be safe. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they live in peace. I uphold the power of peace in all people. Let there be peace in the world, and let it flow within the hearts of all people, from heart to heart, soul to soul. And let me hold peace as a precious jewel, a delicate treasure. Let me lead with kindness, compassion, and cooperation, in keeping with the God of peace that is my source and the source of all beings. Let there be peace, and let it begin with me. And now, immersed in this divine peace, all is well with my soul. For I know that I'm in the presence and radiating the power of peace, right where I am, right here, right now. Peace is in my breath, flowing in my mind, throbbing in my heart. I am peace. Take a deep breath. And as we close this time of meditation, stay with this idea of peace for the remainder of the day, the week, the month. Remind yourself when there's a difficult challenge you're facing, breathe in peace, breathe out peace. And so we say, thank you, God, for this amazing opportunity to be the peace, to practice the peace that we want to see in the world. And we go forward to meet every experience with a peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, and a peaceful spirit. And so it is. Amen.
You don't know me, but I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon the time will tell. Yeah, you telling me the things you're gonna do for me. I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the streets, taking it, yeah. No need for running, taking it to the streets. I'm gonna take it to. Take this message to my brother. You will find her hiding poverty's despair. Yeah, you telling me the things you're gonna do for me. I ain't blind that I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the streets, well, I'm taking it. No need for running. Taking it to the streets. Come on, taking it to the. I'm gonna take it now, taking it to, no need for running, taking it to the street. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, I'm taking it to the street. Woo, I'm taking it to the street. Well, I'm taking it to the street. Well, I'm taking it to the street.
Tom, I'd really like you to keep going because you and I love the same genre of music and you just really bring it. I heard Michael McDonald before I heard the Gibbs, the Brothers Gibb. I am so excited every time I get to be here in Vancouver because the music is the message, y'all. The music is the message. Tom has already preached today. Thank you, Tom. This is just amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And all of you who made this possible today, all of the tech staff who are working in a brand new studio that I got a chance to tour virtually and are putting this whole thing together, making it possible for me to be right here in Vancouver in my office in Lee Summit, Missouri. Isn't that amazing what technology can do? Well, today I'm going to focus on the power of will, as you heard earlier. And today's daily word really ties into this, and it ties into taking it to the streets, Tom, because Jesus was the original urban minister. He didn't build a building and expect people to come to him. He walked the streets and talked to people. And he met with people who didn't have his same lived experience. Just like some of you are Canadian and I'm American born and reared, but we're all brothers and sisters. You don't know me, but I'm your sister, just like Michael McDonald saying. So I'm one of you and you're one of me. We're all in this together. And when we get that, we will have world peace. So today's daily word for Sunday, August 27th, 2023, world peace. I join with others to build a peaceful world. I join with others to build a peaceful world. Let that sink in for just a minute. Because oftentimes things that are happening in our world seem so far away. They seem so daunting. They seem so difficult, so challenging. And we think, little old me, what possibly can I do? Of myself, with Jesus said, I can do nothing, but with God, all things are possible. And as one of my mentors said, we're all God with skin on. So when we do something from a collective consciousness, we can change the world. Margaret Mead said, Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and dedicated citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that it ever has. So if we see places in our lives, in our communities where there is a lack of peace, remember, we each have the power to be the peace that we want to see in the world. So today's daily word goes on to say, the world's problems can feel so overwhelming and its needs so great that I may wonder how my individual efforts could make much of a difference. But every action I take can contribute to world peace. I remember there are people throughout the world who feel the way I do. So many are doing what they can to bring light and love to their neighborhoods and communities. I feel comforted realizing I am not alone in my efforts. Peace begins with each person and inspires others as it spreads, uniting all the world's people to live and thrive in harmony and cooperation. We are meant to live in peace. I hold that vision and offer compassionate service as a way to make my dream for world peace a reality for all of us. Let us then pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. And that is from Romans, the book of Romans, in this textbook we call the Bible, chapter 14, verse 19. Let us then pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. That's our charge. It's an individual responsibility. And when we join our collective consciousness, there's no limit to what we can do to bring about world peace. So I want to start with something to just maybe get your funny bone tickled just a tiny bit, and it relates. A devout atheist dies. He finds himself, ironically, at the pearly gates. Now, if you grew up Baptist like I did, you know that's the streets are paved with gold and the pearly gates, and that's where we're going to go if we lived perfectly good lives. If we live righteously and don't make too many mistakes, then we can go there. It's called heaven. We learn in unity there's no such place, that heaven is a state of consciousness, a state of mind. Well, anyway, this devout atheist who doesn't believe in God finds himself at the pearly gates, and he meets with St. Peter, and St. Peter says to him, oh, because of your non-belief, you must go to hell. Well, that was no surprise to him. He had heard that all of his life. You're an atheist, you don't believe in God, you know where you're going. So he goes to hell, and the devil shows him around, and he is amazed. He puts him in a lovely cottage outside of a beautiful garden on a hillside. The sweet smell of flowers are in the air. And he is told by the devil that he won't want for anything. He will have everything he needs. He's free to walk around the grounds and just enjoy himself. So out for a stroll one day, he discovers a tall wall, and he decides to climb the wall and look over. And what does he see? He sees people writhing in pain, and he's shocked. They're in agony. They're screaming helplessly. And they're in a fire-filled field. That's kind of like a tongue twister. A field filled with fire, you know, the fires of hell. Well, he thought that he was in hell, and he wondered, how come these people on the other side of the fence were having such a hard time when he's in hell and he's having such a good time? So he's asking the devil, what is this? I don't understand. I'm confused. He said, who are those people on the other side of the wall, and why are they suffering? The devil said, oh, those are Christian sinners. Christian sinners? He said, well, why are they suffering if they're Christians? He said, well, I don't know. He said, but, you know, and the guy says, well, but I don't even believe in God, and I'm not suffering. I'm in hell having a good time, and they're over there suffering. I don't understand. He says, well, I don't understand it either, but I guess that's the way they want it. So it's all about our belief system. You know, this belief system, this erroneous belief system that many of us have been taught is that you either do this or do that. And if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And if you do this, you're going to heaven. And you think that's a place. It's a state of consciousness. We create our heaven and our hell right where we are. We don't have to go anywhere, and we don't wait till we die. So let's talk about this unity belief system, because I imagine that there might be some of you who this is your first time in a unity church, or you haven't maybe heard this type of discussion before. So I want to make sure that I'm clear. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, said, we're all members of life's fascinating classroom. Take that in for a minute. Life is a classroom, isn't it? Every experience is an opportunity to learn something, to grow. And that's what we do. He also said that unity is a link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus Christ. And that our objective is to discern the truth about this thing called Christianity for ourselves and prove it to ourselves. It's a personal responsibility. And he also said that this truth teaching is not new, nor do we claim any special revelations or discovery of new principles. Our purpose is to help teach ourselves and others who wish to learn, to use and prove the eternal truth taught by the master teacher, Jesus Christ. So that's what this lesson is all about today. Where there's a will, there's an executive. An executive of the will is perfect for this lesson on the power of the will, because the will is the executive faculty of the mind. You might consider the fact that your will is part of your being on the board of directors of God. So it's God's board of directors. Now, Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was the teacher of teachers of New Thought, brought this idea of the 12 powers to leaders of New Thought like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who founded Unity. And in this idea, she said there are 12 innate powers in each of us. We all possess these same powers, and that these powers enable us to live our lives more fully when activated. Now, that's the principle of the thing. You have to activate the powers. And so these 12 powers are representative of the disciples. The Fillmores went further, not just looked at the powers, but they looked at the 12 disciples and how do they each relate to one of these powers. And they looked at the body, the anatomy, human anatomy. Charles Fillmore did a lot of study on the human anatomy to see how does that relate to some feature in our bodies, some ability that we have in our physical bodies. And he related each one of those to a power and a disciple. And then he looked at the energy vibration. We all vibrate, and vibrations often come in the color spectrum. Certain colors vibrate different fields, different energy fields. So Charles Fillmore merged or married a color vibration to each of the 12 powers with each of the 12 disciples and the location in the body. So this month, the month of August, in my metaphysical Bible class, which I do every Sunday morning on Zoom and in person at Unity Temple on the Plaza, my church where I'm one of the ministers in Kansas City, and I do a series on the 12 powers. Each month we do a different power, and the power for the month of August is the power of the will. And so this power is about our executive faculty. The disciple is Matthew. It's located in the front of the brain. And the color vibration is silver or gray. So what's the significance of the book of Matthew? When we talk about this power of will, it's significant because Matthew tells a story of Jesus from birth to, like many of the canonical Gospels, from birth to crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. It's not the story of the man Jesus from 2,500 years ago. It's our story. It's the story, like all of the Bible, it's a textbook about the evolution of human consciousness from our Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible. We all have a beginning, and that word means beginning, our Genesis, to those experiences that lead us to a revelation, the last book of the Bible. When you have a revelation experience, you raise your consciousness to a higher level so that you now see things from a different vantage point. You now have a greater understanding, and you start over in a new beginning, a new Genesis at a higher level. So one of the things that I often do when I'm studying scriptures, I look for something more modern to help us get the idea, something we can relate to. I didn't want to show this because I got it on YouTube, but I encourage you to watch it. So Google Zion Clark. Zion Clark, a few weeks ago, he was auditioning for America's Got Talent, and he was accepted as one of the new participants in America's Got Talent. He was born without legs. And the video that you'll watch is about 8 minutes. The America's Got Talent video of Zion Clark will blow your mind. It's all about the power of will. So this young man, 25 years old from Canton, Ohio, is auditioning for America's Got Talent. He's selected. And he tells a story of making no excuses. He was born without legs. And at the age of 16, he was in 16 foster homes. They treated him like an animal. And so at the age of 16, he was aging out of foster care. And the organization sent a letter to a young lady who had adopted other children through foster care and said, he's born without legs and we don't know what to do with him. We're just getting ready to throw him out. She says, I'll take him. She changed his life. He said that she wouldn't allow any excuses. So his name, Zion, he realized his birth parents, he never knew. One was in prison, the other had been a drug addict and gave him up, so he never knew. But his birth mother named him Zion Zachariah Daniels. And he said, my name is Zion, and that means mountain. And he said, Zion, the mountain of Zion was where the people in the Bible went to protect themselves from the world. And he learned that was what he had to do, was protect himself from the world. He ended up earning several Guinness records for the fastest man on 2 hands. And when you watch his video, you'll be amazed. He says he has tattooed on his back, no excuses, no excuses. You see, the power of will is such that we can rise above any circumstance if we don't let our circumstances control us. Unity's third principle is we create our reality by what we choose to think, by what we feel, and by what we believe. Now, Zion Clark couldn't have created his circumstances. He was born without legs. He could easily have given in to what society said about him. You're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to do that. You will not have a good life. You might as well just cash in your chips. But he refused, and his adopted mother refused to let him give up on anything. He ended up being a champion over able-bodied wrestlers. He won 3 Guinness records for that. So what was it about Zion Clark, this story I'm telling you that's so powerful? It's his will. It's his will. We all have the power of free will. We can choose how we think. We can choose how we feel. We can choose what we believe about ourselves and other people. No matter what our circumstances are, no matter what other people say about us, we have the power through our will to rise above that. He told the American Idol host that he had over 200 failures before winning his first match. And he told them at the end that what he wanted to leave people with was learn how to fail. And I would say the most important thing that I got from watching that is when you're down at the lowest point of your life, the only way is to get up. You have no other choice. Get up. Get up. That takes will, and it takes willpower. Now, there are many people who believe that God's will is in control of everything in our lives. We blame God for things. Zion Clark could have easily said, well, God made me this way, and apparently God didn't intend for me to have a good life, so I'll just have to deal with it. I'm not going to try to do anything. I'm not going to try to be anything different than what I'm not capable, poor, pitiful me. But instead, he was encouraged to use the power of his will to do greater things than he thought he could do. Jesus said in scripture, I've told you these things so that you will have peace. In the world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And this is all in Matthew. And he also went on to say, these things I do, you may do also, and even greater works. And what that means is when we don't allow our circumstances to dictate who we are and what we're capable of, there's no limit to what we can accomplish. Look at this young man, 25 years old, born without legs. And when you see him go through his gymnastics, it will absolutely amaze you. So please watch that video. But God's will is not for suffering or punishment. Like the joke I told in the beginning, there is no such thing. We punish ourselves. We cause ourselves to suffer because we so want things to be different than and better than they are, that we focus on what the appearance is of lack and limitation than on what our abilities are. Our willpower has to be activated. Now, there are 12 powers, and I mentioned that earlier. There are 12 powers. And until you activate the power of your will, and you make sure all those other powers are operating together, the will won't work. So you can have all the faith, all the wisdom, all the love, all the strength, all the imagination, the order, the understanding, the will and the power, the zeal, enthusiasm, the release and the life and the love in your life. You can have all of that, but if you don't have the will to exercise those, they will do you no good. We all have those 12 powers, but we have to have the will to activate those powers. I read another story from USA Today about the young man on November 30th, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley, who killed 4 students at Oxford High School in Michigan. In his written proclamation, he claimed there is no God. He said that he is a demon, and he announced his plan to kill everyone in the hallway at school that day. Now, after he was captured and jailed, he had a different story. He blamed God for what he had done. In other words, it was God's will for his actions. He said, "Why didn't you stop it, God? Why didn't you stop it when it happened? I'm sorry, God." You see, as human, we often do that. We want what we want, but we also want God to fix everything, and we don't want to have to do much for that. We feel a sense of entitlement. And when things don't go our way, it's blame it on God. It's God's will. Well, God's will for us is not punishment or suffering. God is all good, all the time, everywhere, all powerful, all knowing. That's unity's first principle. And the second principle is that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore we inherit goodness. We are made in that love. We are love. But we then have the third principle is choosing how we apply the principles, choosing whether or not we want to act out of love, choosing whether or not we want to act out of the principles that we learned that we are inherently good. We get to choose not to do good, but we don't get to blame it on some outside force. God's will for us is goodwill. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions to think about. If God's will for us is goodwill, do you make excuses and say, well, maybe this isn't God's will for me to do this or that? Do you blame God for your circumstances that appear to be beyond your control? Have you ever exercised your willpower to keep going, even in the face of some of the most difficult experiences? That's when you know you're working within goodwill. I watched a movie on Netflix the other night, and I was just scrolling through Netflix. I never hardly look at Netflix, and I thought, well, I want to watch something different. It's called Otto, O-T-T-O. I don't know if you've ever watched it. I would encourage you to, because this really talks about this idea of willpower, especially when we're going through a dark night of the soul, like the loss of a loved one. So Otto couldn't break free of his grief of losing his wife. And when he was forced to retire from his job, it seemed like everything started crashing down on him. He was an engineer. He tried everything to get rid of himself. He went out and bought rope. He was a very crotchety, grouchy man. Everybody knew how he was, so they just ignored him. But he was like an M&M, hard on the outside, that shell, and very soft on the inside. But nobody could get past the shell. So he tried everything. He got a bolt and he screwed it to the ceiling, and he created a noose, and he stood on the noose. He put his neck in the noose, and he pushed the table from under him, and then the bolt broke away, and he fell to the floor. He was all choking, but he fell to the floor just in time. He threw himself. He saw an elderly man fall off. He went to the train station. He was standing on the edge when an elderly man passed out and fell onto the tracks when the train was on its way. And nobody was helping. People had their cell phones out. They were taking pictures. This story was going to be on the 9:00 news. They were really excited about seeing this story of this man in front of the train. But he had this heart, and he jumped off the ledge, and he went and rescued the man. Then he stood there, and he was waiting for that train to run him over. And somebody reached their hand down and begged him to let him help him up. So that was thwarted, that effort. Then he tried he took a shotgun. He closed off the room. He put plastic up. He did all to keep the blood spatter down. And then a knock on the door kept him from doing that. And the gun went off and it shot through the ceiling. And the neighbor who knocked on the door said, "What was that noise?" He said, "Oh, it was my compressor backfiring." He tried asphyxiating himself in the running car. His neighbor was banging on the door. Her husband had fallen off the ladder and was rushed to the hospital, and she needed him to take her to the hospital. So no matter what he tried, he could not let go of himself. He could not kill himself. You see, a person can continually declare, "I want to die, I don't want to live," and yet goes on living, because God's will for life transcends even our deepest desire for death. That's what you call grace. That's what you call grace. Now, that's not to say that people don't take their lives and aren't successful. I'm not downplaying that at all. But I'm saying by the grace of God, we're all here because every one of us, I can guarantee, has been through something, some dark night of the soul that's led us in a direction. And thank God, God's goodwill prevailed for us. My title today, Where There's a Will, There's a Way, ties directly into principle number 3. I want to repeat it again. I can't say it enough. We create our experiences, our reality, by what we choose to think, by what we feel and what we believe. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. All hell could be breaking loose, but nothing can disturb the deep, calm peace of your soul and your mind when you're connected to that power that is within you. You have the power within you to rise above any circumstance. And all power comes from God and is received through our individual sense of who we are, our I am. I am is who you are. That is your God name, I am. Brian, I can't say you am because I can't be you. Only you can say I am Brian. That is your God-given name. That's who you are, who you represent. And our will, our Matthew consciousness, directs us into specific action according to our understanding, which is Thomas. And understanding was last month's power. Understanding and will go together, but without all the powers, will doesn't function. So the scripture there are 2 scriptures I want to give you to think about today for the week. The first one is one of my staples, and one of my members of my Bible class is here, and she mentioned this morning in the Bible class because I bring this scripture up all the time. It ties into everything that we teach in unity. It's from the book of Romans, the 12th chapter, the 2nd verse. Do not conform yourself to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what is God's good, pleasing, and perfect will for your life. And then another from the book of Matthew, the disciple for this power of will. The book of Matthew, chapter 9, verse 17. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put in fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved. And that talks about our minds. You cannot keep putting the same old thoughts and thinking something's going to change, something new is going to emerge. You've got to purge yourself of these ideas of lack and limitation, of not enoughness. Imagine what that must have been like for Zion Clark. How much perjury he had to do to get rid of, or purging he had to do to get rid of these ideas that were passed on from his birth, from all these foster homes that treated him less than a person, until he got to the right person who said, you can do anything you set your mind to. Don't let this disability be an obstacle for you. And I'm sure you can think of other stories of other people. And unlike the young man who committed the heinous crime at his high school in Oxford, at Oxford High School in Michigan, we don't blame God because we have the free will to choose how we think, what we feel, and what we believe. And when we change our thinking, as Norman Vincent Peale said, we will change our world. So I invite you to use the power of your will to choose a life of no excuses, like Zion Clark, to show the world that anything is possible. So back to the beginning, when our host read to you the 5 statements, I want you to hear those again, and I want you to take them into your heart space, because you have the power through your will. When you activate your will with all of the other powers, you have the power to create a world that goes beyond anything you might imagine right now. You have the power to create a world where peace prevails and everyone lives in peace. So the first affirmation is, I possess will, an incredible gift of spirit. I possess will, an incredible gift of spirit. The second is, where there is a will, there is always a way. And the third is, my will is growing stronger every day. The fourth is, this week I consciously use my will to create more love, more laughter, and more abundance in my life. And the fifth and final is, I am so grateful willpower gives me the ability to co-create my life. And so it is, and so it always has been. Don't blame your circumstances on where you are in mind, body, and spirit. You don't have to let your circumstances define you. You are greater than you know, more powerful than you can imagine. Life ahead is greater than anything that has been outside of your world. You have the power to create your own circumstances, one affirmative thought at a time. As you think, so you travel. And as you travel, you attract. In the words of one of my great philosophers and writers, James Allen, on ideals. So God's will for you is goodwill. This will or divine desire is so great that it even seeps through our willfully closed minds. I want to thank you all again for being a beneficial presence here at Unity of Vancouver, for joining us today. And I invite you, if you're interested, I'm going to be doing a 6-week series with Vancouver starting September 5th on Tuesday nights from 8:30 to 10 p.m. And I'm in the central region, so you know that's late for me. 8:30 to 10 p.m. Central Time. So that would be 6:30 to 8 p.m. your time, Vancouver time. And it's going to be on the 12 powers. So we're going to dig deeper into these powers, how we use them, how we activate them to change our lives. God bless.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard you will find to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams. And life gets more exciting with each passing day. And love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart? For it's better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, think of all you'll derive out of being alive. And here's the best part. You'll have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth if you're young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive out of being alive. And here's the best part. You'll have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. Look at all you'll derive out of being alive. Yes, here is the best part. You'll have a head start if you are among the very young at heart.
Let's hear it one more time for Tom Arnson. And let's hear it one more time for Reverend Sandra Campbell. And you know, if you're watching online, why don't you come on out and join us in person if you can. If you live in Vancouver, come be part of this amazing energy. You'll hear great music, you'll meet friendly, like-minded people who are easy to talk to. We're excited to announce today's teacher, Reverend Sandra Campbell, will be hosting, as she mentioned, a 6-week class online for all of us at Unity of Vancouver entitled 12 Powers in You. We'll explore how we awaken to and activate these 12 powers of faith, love, strength, judgment, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, enthusiasm, release, and life. We find ourselves in a state of wholeness, the oneness with the divine. The classes start this coming Tuesday, September 5th, and will run for 6 weeks in a row from 6:30 to 8 p.m. on Zoom. And you can always head over to our website, unityofvancouver.org, to get all the information. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to miss it. We're also excited to announce, are you ready? Unity Amateur Talent Night. Do you have a talent, a song, a dance, an entertaining story, poetry, a comedy routine, or a funny joke or two? We'd love to see you and support you. And there will even be a few prizes. So come on out and be part of the fun. Please enter your special talent by September 17th. Complete details can be found on our website, and you can follow the links to register in our classes and events page. And lastly, have you ever wondered what A Course in Miracles is all about? check a class out. Drop-ins are warmly welcomed. Study groups meet on Tuesdays downstairs from 12:30 to 2:30 in person, right here at Unity, and we'll resume our online Thursday evening class next Thursday, the following Thursday, September 7th, as our summer break is coming to an end. And of course, join us next Sunday as we welcome Yogasharini Metriai, who will share proven methods for healing your traumas and triggers. It'll be a great talk. You don't want to miss it. Today's affirmative prayer chaplains are Carol Roman, Jeannie Bell Irving, Margaret McLeod, and Marilyn Norrie on Zoom. Could you stand, please, so people can see who you are? To have a confidential prayer with one of our chaplains, simply come up to the front after all the music is finished. They'll be waiting for you in the front row until then, and would be love to support you in prayer. And if you're watching on Zoom or YouTube, I'll show you how you too can participate in just a few minutes. Please join us downstairs after the service for coffee, tea, cookies, and birthday cake. We invite everyone with a birthday this month to join us for sweets and treats and allow us to celebrate you.